Hello, welcome to Coffee with Kathleen. We are going to the Grand Ole Opry today with the coffee cup, I think. But I'm super excited to introduce you to Laurie Bacopoulos. She is the founder of Cobblestone Consulting, and she will be our special guest today. I'm going to talk about her career journey and all kinds of cool stuff. So happy you're here.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hi.
How are you?
Good to see you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Awesome. So, Laurie, let's jump right into it. Why don't you talk a little bit about, the founding of your company and your career journey in general, and how you got here?
Well, thank you, Kathleen, and thanks for having me on. I'm super excited, and my journey has been quite the interesting one. I started at UPS corporate, and I mention that because it is in Atlanta, Georgia, and as many folks know, UPS was an outstanding foundation to help me really drive and learn professionalism, growth, leadership, and also giving back to the community. So that was an excellent way to start my career. And just moving on to other milestones, went on to work in another larger corporation through a mentor and wound up in Y2K. Y2K was very interesting. Another sort of male-dominated environment, lots of IT, lots of servers. So I decided to go back to school at night and get my master's in information systems management and program management. What that allowed me to do is really be successful during Y2K, and had an opportunity to the company was sold, either stay or do something different. So I was at a crossroads. And because of, as you see, my last name is Greek and my family is from Athens, Greece. And my father was a business owner. So I always dreamed to be an international business owner. So I took this opportunity and started consulting, and the education really allowed me to, have the tools to engage with larger transformation projects and things of that nature. And basically I started Cobblestone Consulting almost 24 years ago.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. I had no idea you'd been doing this for that long. That's really exciting.
Yes, 24 years. And that's when my journey brought me into Atlanta, Georgia, and helping to deliver enterprise-wide projects to companies like Genuine Parts Company, Napa, and other sort of banking institutions.
Great. So look, talk a little bit about making that transition, because you were an employee, right, over successive different companies, and large companies have nothing, if not a lot of infrastructure, rules, all of that. And you kind of just completely broke that apart and said, well, I'm going to go, do my own thing. And I find, I've worked for a lot of smaller companies. And I find sometimes even the transition for people coming from a really large company to a really small one is challenging, much less sort of coming from a really large company and just striking out on your own. So what was that like?
Yeah, it's definitely scary, right? To go out, especially when you didn't come from one of the big fives and you're running a consulting company, you don't really have the framework to do so. So what I did in that case is I really took some time to learn how to deliver and consult successfully myself. So I was able to learn that through other organizations, following their lead, always networking, always trying to see, there's always somebody that's already done it and done it successfully. So I was always trying to find that group that had already done it successfully, and found mentors to help me figure out how to build that plan and go in the direction that I needed to go to be successful.
So that's interesting you mentioned that, because that's actually, and I don't know if I've ever talked about this before in the podcast, but it's one of the things that I tell myself. So when I'm about to do something new, a lot of times I will tell myself, lots of people have done this before. If they can do it, so can you. And that's something that I sort of, really have leaned into over the years. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. But I think that's really important, because most of us aren't doing things that, are super, super, groundbreaking, inventing new things that have never before been discovered. We're walking down a path that others have walked down. And one of the ways, of course, you mentioned my other word that I love a lot, which is networking, and how you can leverage, the expertise of other people to sort of help pave your way, so to speak. So how do you think about networking? Like, what are your tips for people that, aren't doing it very well, or aren't doing very much of it, or whatever?
Oh, I love that. And I love networking, and you can learn how to network. A lot of people are a little bit shy. Luckily, I didn't struggle with that. Mm-hmm. So the bigger the room of people, the more opportunity. And so what I would always say is, it's important to make sure that, I don't know if you do much of the incantations, and it's very important. We've talked about this in various environments, but if you tell yourself that you can go do it, you can go meet people, and you have what people are interested in learning, that's the first step. But I mean, we could have a whole nother networking call. I love it. And it's always important to go into networking with an intent and with your plan of, I'm going to meet 5 people and this is how I'm going to do it. And, there's strategies, but it is so important. There's so many great networking. I mean, look at, I'm going to go ahead and bring it out with, women in auto care. Yep. It's fantastic, right? And mm-hmm. I only learned about it a couple years ago from my mentor, Jim Smith, one of 10. I have so many mentors, but there's so many great circles to come join and learn from other women. And I always tell people, just even in the networking in regards to out in, Project Management Institute or Women in Auto Care, going to a conference, there's always the networking within your organization.
Yep. Right. Yeah. I mean, don't forget about that. Most people know now that RepairPal was acquired by Yelp. So while we had 89 employees, and I know all 88 of the other people that I work with, now suddenly I have 5,000 new colleagues. Right. And so there's a lot of opportunity there to really connect or figure out what it is that people do. And a lot of what I spend my time doing now when I'm talking with someone, I just had a one-on-one with someone who has been supporting our business since the acquisition today. And I said, hey, I've got a question for you. Who are 5 people who I might not know that you think it's important for me to know? And then I'll just, it's a very kind culture, luckily. And so I'll just reach out and, send notes to those folks. Right. And so I think that's super important to think about how you do that intentionally. A lot of people, I think, keep hoping that it's going to just sort of happen by accident or organic. And a lot of us are in these virtual environments now, right? And so it has to be intentional. But you mentioned another thing that I'd like to kind of double click on a little bit. You talked about having lots of mentors. So what's some of the advice that's really kind of sustained you or inspired you along the way that you've received from some of these incredible folks?
Yes, there's so many, but some that I'm applying now in my journey. There's a really awesome gentleman here that runs Small Business Matters in Atlanta, Georgia, and he sent me a gift, which was called the 5-Minute Journal, and it really changed my life. He sent it about 5 years ago, and it only takes 5 minutes to set the intent of what you're grateful for, what would make your day amazing, and then what are your, what do you believe in yourself that day. And it's only 3 points that you write down, and it really sets that intention. So Tim helped me with that new habit. And then at the end of the day, you reflect on how it happened. And a lot of times, Kathleen, the most amazing thing happens. And that is those 3 things that that is going to make your day absolutely amazing actually happen. Because in the back of your mind, it's happening. And so, I mean, things happen, but 90% of the time, that's going to be a result. So that is a great advice that Tim gave me, and it's a habit that I also achieved. The other point that is something that I have started as a habit as well is this idea and exercise of visualization. And so if you're looking to be in the next step of your career, yes, back to your great questions, who should I be speaking with? Also go to those folks that are in, that position. But also every morning there is an exercise that I do where I can visualize myself in the next part of my journey. Mm-hmm. And this is actually a Tony Robbins priming exercise, and it takes about 10 minutes, and it's pretty amazing. So that's the other thing that I've implemented. So Kathleen, I could go on and on, but those are some very interesting habits that I've picked up lately that have been really helpful. And then from a business perspective, I've always learned ask lots of open-ended questions. Ask questions, listen, ask more questions, and then never assume is always a good one. And I love continuous improvement. So if there's even something we can learn from a relationship, from a project, from something like that, I'm always working with folks to make sure that we can always better our relationship or project.
Yeah, I mean, well, and that's what happened here, right? As you reached out and we had a conversation, and now, here we are. And I'm excited because I feel like we have so many things in common, and you sent me that beautiful card, and I can't wait to respond. So I've got it's messy. It's supposed to be a puzzle table, like one of those tables where you put together puzzles. And sometimes I do use it for that because I like to have something to do in between meetings that just like engages my brain in a different way, like a little bit of a reset. But right now it is absolutely cluttered with all of these cards, postcards, stamps, stickers. I've been, writing to people pretty regularly. So anyways, just so much fun to unfold like who you are and get to know you in a different way. But what I really love about what you said is you gave 2 like concrete practices. One's 5 minutes and one's 10 minutes. So now in 15 minutes, you've kind of established an entirely different pattern for your day, right? And I've been doing that in the start of some of the longer meetings that I have, is just taking like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes to say, maybe there's 30 people in a room, but in a Zoom room or something, but I'm like, hey, I would love if like 2 people would just share what their intention is for this meeting. And if everyone else would just sort of quietly, come up with one, because when you're just, flying from one meeting to the next and you're not really paying attention, and you're just, by the time you get to the end of your day, you're drained. You don't know why, right? You're like, what did I even do today? It's like that syndrome we used to have when we were kids, and we'd get home and some adult would say, what did you learn today? Or what did you do today? And you'd be like, I don't know. What did I do today? Right. And now that, I know
you need the 5-minute journal, Kathleen.
Yes.
You write down what you did that day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't want to fly through your whole life, get to the end of your life, and somebody's like, what did you do with your life? And you have no answer. So to me, that's what I'm passionate about. And I don't want that for other people either. We spend so much of our time at work. If we can be a little bit more, intentional about how we approach it and a little bit more present and aware, it changes the whole game. Right. So I love that. And I love that. I mean, you've been running a successful business for over 2 decades, right? And so your habits are something that I think everybody should really think about, leaning into. And the good news about that too is once you've got the habit, it's portable. So even if, like, I travel a ton, so even if you don't have the journal, you can still set an intention and think about what you're grateful for, and have some of the visualization practice and things like that virtually. So I take notes all over lots of different kinds of things. So to me, it doesn't have to be, in one book, right? So think about how to take it, make it a habit, and then make your habits, portable to wherever you are or what's going on for that time period. Super important.
Yes. Yes. And to your point about, I love your idea about setting the intention in the meetings. That's the other thing that I learned really just recently, because coming from such a rigorous corporate environment and having to implement that even throughout my business because of the bigger corporations that we serve, it was very uncomfortable to be sort of personal, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a new, from Mo Bunnell, the book that I sent you, he says, you just think about your friends with people for so long. Why don't you make your clients your friends and your partners and your peers? It might not be on the exact same level, but I've been really enjoying, like you, getting to know people at, a deeper level, and it just makes people more relaxed and open to share, and that then sometimes opens more creativity. So they don't have to be, answering you so much in a box. You're open to listening to some of their other, realms.
Yeah. And I love the thing that you brought up about, asking questions as well. People love to talk about their answers to questions. And it's a really good way to open things up, is to ask questions, and then obviously to actually listen to the answers. But I think asking questions is sort of it's a big unlock. I found myself in a position 5 years ago where I needed to do a lot more negotiating than I used to. Mostly before that, I was a lot on the relationship side, or building out, kind of sales or business development relationships vis-a-vis relationship, and not so much having to negotiate the finer points of contracts and all that kind of stuff. I do a lot more vendor management, other things now. And what comes up are contract renewals or details or whatever. And I would get really nervous because I don't like to be the bad guy. We could unpack that for days, but essentially I learned the way forward, even in a negotiation, which I thought it was, having a hard line and really advocating your point of view and being very like rah, run across the bridge kind of stuff. And it's not. It's also about asking, really good or really targeted questions, so that you're, essentially leading a person the way that you want them to go, but by being in deep inquiry, which to me makes perfect sense. And so I'm like, great, there's a way that I can still, be me, but actually be a pretty effective negotiator. So questions are incredible way of moving forward in business and in life and all of that.
Yeah. That's a great tip about negotiating and having the questions. I would think that there's a little more prep there that you're trying to get to, Z, and how are you going to cultivate those questions so that you get there?
Yeah, and really understanding, like, if you feel like you're going to be separate from, like, I only want, I want these things to happen, and I feel like the person is way over here. The further apart you are, the more questions you can ask, right? To really, truly understand, like, their point of view and where they're coming from. So you can start to pull some of those common threads, because otherwise you just don't see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I'll take that tip. That's a great tip. Thank you.
Well, I think it's going to be natural for you because you're already sort of in that, Q&A mode.
Right.
But that's the beauty of these kinds of conversations too. So, So what are you really excited about right now, Laurie, in your business or your life? Or
I am super excited about women in auto care. I really am. I'm having a fun time meeting all the different women. I'm having a fun time participating in the circles and on the champion committee. And then I also had fun going outside of my box and actually donating a book club. And I did that at the beginning of this year, and that was really fun. I've never done that before. And the other big tip to folks is you got to be open to everything. I mean, you got to be careful, but you have to have, go through life with eyes wide open and try different things all the time, so that you can grow. So I'm excited about that. And then I'm really excited about this AI revolution. I will say I'm excited about it. We are looking at ways that we can implement it in our services, so we can provide improved services to help our customers with better productivity, increased delivery and service. So it's a very interesting time, and we're excited about it, and excited that it'll really help us even elevate our services more.
yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of fear and a lot of trepidation out there.
Yeah.
Particularly in some of the creative professions around AI. And I do think there's a really real risk of like kind of plagiarism, or people not really leaning into doing their own work anymore, and that kind of thing. But I think especially for small businesses, AI is such an unlock, because it's kind of like when we first got SaaS, right? Yes. And before that, only large enterprises could afford tools that were actually making businesses more efficient, effective, and all these other things. And then SaaS came along, and web-based software tools and things like that. And suddenly it got very democratized, where things that used to, bigger ERP systems that used to cost tens of thousands of dollars are suddenly $200 a month.
Yes.
And, every small business could afford them. And I was part of that on the accounting and fintech side. And it was really exciting. And of course that does, every time you've got a program or a system that does something, it does eliminate a certain kind of work. But then it also unlocks things that we didn't know were possible. So I think what happens is the standard for what we're supposed to deliver as consultants or whatever keeps going up.
Yes.
And so because these tools are available and more people are capable of it. And so then, the humans that are kind of using and leading the technology are still super important. I don't see, I don't think it's replacing us in the same way that we get afraid of it. What are some of the cool things that you're starting to do with AI that you're specifically excited about for your business?
So one is really understanding how we can use. I mean, a lot of people are already using Zoom with the transcription and things of that nature. But how can you, inside, a lot of people are using Microsoft Copilot and the whole Office 365. So how can you use everything within the Office 365 ecosystem where it saves you time for, let's say, project management, meeting notes? How do these things automatically get, captured through the AI tools and then ultimately released to the clients and the partners in less time? So there's areas, so we're looking at ways to help our own company in that way, and also build some training to help other companies leverage that, internally. So it's really just knowing how to use these tools to, it'll really help admin assistants. I know they're saying they'll replace an assistant, but, I think it'll just make them even more, effective. And how do you bring all the pieces in your ecosystem together so that you can deliver better products? So that's what we're investigating now. And a lot of the video development as well, which will help us with lot of our custom work, companies need, some more customization around their videos, and it can be very expensive. So if we can use some of the AI technology in collaboration with their culture, images, branding, then it would be something that is a really nice add-on that doesn't cost them a whole lot of money. So this is where we're looking at tools to actually help the customer have more, interactivity and visually stimulating training and things of that nature.
Oh, that's super exciting. Well, and I mean, in your line of work, you have to stay on top of current trends and things like that. So how do you, I mean, AI might be sort of one helpful answer, but how do you stay on top of everything? I mean, you've got to run your business, network, as you've mentioned, be an effective leader, keep on top of your client projects, but also, stay more so on the leading edge of what's going on technology wise, because that's literally your business. So how do you think about managing your time around all the various things that you need to do, et cetera?
Well, so that's where I'm really hoping AI can help me gain more time, Kathleen, to go ride my horse. Because right now that extra time is, hey, what's next? What's coming out? But I'll tell you how I'm able to do it. And that is, I have a really great team that are also tasked with innovation. So they look for what's coming in, what's just out, what's next. And we meet and we talk about these ideas within our own company. And then, one of the things that really helped me, because you can't do it alone, is I have some amazing partners. My IT partner, we've been in business 12 years. I have two other partners that bring innovation to the table with our learning management system and AI. So I've really built a really nice ecosystem that helps us stay on the cutting edge and deliver the best services. So that I do it through partners and teams.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I love that. And that's what makes you such an effective leader, both of your business and of people. And so I think that's as good a place as any for us, although I think I could probably talk to you for hours. So we'll have
Likewise.
But I think that's as good a place as any to kind of wrap this up for today. But I have really enjoyed having you on. This has been an amazing conversation. I think the viewers / listeners of this podcast are going to get a ton of little juicy nuggets from you. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, Kathleen, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. And thank you so much for having me on the air.
Cheers.
Cheers.